Hello, this is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming new moon in almost 16 degrees of Aquarius, which will be exact on February 4th at 4:04 p.m. East Coast time in the US, which is also New York time, or 9:04 p.m. London time. Now, this, of course, is the beginning of a new moon cycle. And the new moon, of course, is an introverted time. It's a time where we go within and kind of get in touch with the energies to see what we wish to align ourselves with for the next 28 days. So it's a calm time. It's a meditative time. We will also talk about setting intentions and the best times to do so towards the end of this video. So stay tuned for that. And please take advantage of the timestamps that I have created and have added to the description part of the video underneath the video. In case you want to watch the video in shorter sequences, feel free to click on these timestamps below and get straight to the part of the video that you want to watch or get back to. All right, so that is available. Now let's get started. What is this new moon all about? So this new moon is in freedom-loving, forward-thinking Aquarius. And we have our eye on the future with Aquarius always. So the highest vibration of Aquarius gives us the opportunity to see a clear vision for our life, for the future. And we're definitely ready to make some huge improvements and have some progress in our lives. So Aquarius is very progressive. Now, Aquarius also deals with the power of ideals, technology, and inventions. So we're definitely more interested in the collective with Aquarius as well, and in particular in changing group consciousness. So we want to really affect how we as a collective operate on this planet or in this world that we live in. So at its best, Aquarius stands for equality and diversity, innovation and reform, collaboration and community, and as I already said, we strive for progress in all of those areas. And the challenge here is to unite and transcend differences of gender, race, cultural or religious background. Because, when we think about everyone who is involved in this human experience, what we call the human experience here on this planet, there are a lot of different types of people from different backgrounds, different, belief systems, looking differently, tall, small, big, tiny, so there's all types of people, and not just visually, but, intellectually, emotionally, on all these different levels. And so it's when we're trying to unite people, right? It's important that we're able to still honor that everyone's still different in their own way, even though we want to have a collective that can work together. So the challenge, and that is a real challenge, right, is to bring everybody together. So to unite and transcend our differences, that is really the challenge with Aquarius. And so to move even further into a higher Aquarian vibration, we really need to ask ourselves the following questions. Where am I personally called to make a difference in this world? And what could I as an individual do for humanity? And how might group consciousness help humanity make progress? So the understanding, what is group consciousness to begin with, right? How do we develop group consciousness? What does it mean? And how can we have more progress within group consciousness? And the last question you can ask yourself here is, where might I begin? What's my starting point? How can I even start to contemplate all of these things and make a difference in some way? And I also want you to remember that even though Aquarius has usually quite large visions and is quite a visionary energy that usually is very big, I want you to also think, what are some small, tiny little steps that you personally can make that can move you in that direction? Now, please remember to use all the questions that I pose in my videos for contemplation, for meditation or journaling, rather than simply answering the question. It's not so much about finding the correct or the right answer to my questions. It's more about aligning yourself, energetically speaking, with the current energies. And the questions are just supposed to support you with that. And, contemplation, meditation, and journaling is a great way of doing that. Now, if you want to have access to the new moon questions from this video and from all my videos in writing, and you also might want to join us for the members only full moon video every month, feel free to check out the various levels of membership that are available on my website. There's big discounts currently available as well. So just go to astrologercoach.com and see what's available if that's of interest to you. Okay. Now, if you're already a member, please go to the blog page and look for the tag New Moon Questions. Tags can be found on the right-hand side of the blog page if you're accessing it from a computer, below the categories. So just scroll down below categories and you get to the tags. And if you're looking at this from a phone, then you have to scroll down all the way to the bottom, below all the posts, all the blog posts. Unfortunately, it's all the way at the bottom. But if you get all the way down there, then you will find the tags there as well, and you can look for new moon questions. All right, now back to the new moon. Now, of course, we also kind of want to take a look at what's the lower vibration of Aquarius and how can we work with that energy and be more conscious of that energy. So the lower vibration is really about feeling like an outsider, almost like we don't fit in, or maybe we're a little too different from other people. And so that can either make us want to, isolate, or we want to rebel against social structures that don't fit with our own vision. Now, we do get trapped in these lower vibrations when we do not take responsibility for our part in the collective. So if we think we're separate from the collective, right? If we think we're not a part of it, then we get trapped in this lower vibration. And when we do not honor our individual genius, so when we're not honoring the part that we can actually play, the difference that we can actually make, which is connected to our individual genius, and also our unique contribution to society, right? Or to our communities, whether that's society at large on a very large scale, or whether that's just our communities that we surround ourselves with, whether that's online or whether that's, in the area that you live in. If we don't see that contribution that we can make, and if we're not connecting, that's when we usually go into those lower vibrations of Aquarius, this sense of separation. Now ask yourself, what lies between me and the access to my inner genius, the part of you that is capable of making a difference, that inner genius, that really individual part of you? And what if I allowed myself to be both different and connected to others? And this is important because we are different from each other. We're not all the same. You might have friends, like-minded people that you surround yourself with, that are like you and that share values that you have, and that have similar interests to you. But when you go beyond that group of people, you might find that you're different from other people, or other people are different from you. And so how can we allow ourselves to be different and connected with other people? And this is a very central Aquarian question. This is very important to be in the higher vibration of Aquarius, is to ask yourself that question. And what if taking responsibility for how things are was the perfect jumpstart for a better future? So we have to remember, very often when we want to change the future, right? When we have this vision of a future that's sort of like the ideal vision of how we think human beings should live together and everything should work, we usually don't actually want to take responsibility for how things currently are, because we think that we're not responsible for how things currently are. But if we're capable of taking responsibility for how things currently are, we're not going to separate ourselves out of that collective, and we're not going to blame others for how things currently are, because that's really not very productive. And so if we can take responsibility for how things are, then, do we have a better starting point, right? So ask yourself that question. What if taking responsibility for how things are was the perfect jump start for a better future? If that was sort of like a good starting point to actually create that vision that you would like to have for humanity or for this world. Now, every single one of us has a special gift. And that's just how it is. Whether we know this or not, whether we can acknowledge it or not, it's just everyone has a special something. Kind of like a spark that's unique to us. And when we access that inner genius and share it with the world, we can make quantum leaps of insight and embark on remarkable collaborations with other people. But it's very important that we actually access that part of ourselves, that we really tap into that in a way that we can open up to it, and we can use it. We can use it in our collaborations with other people, in our connecting with other people. So what you want to ask yourself here is, how does my inner genius make itself known? And again, you don't have to have the answer to that question. Simply sit with that question. Either sit with it for the next 28 days or meditate on it or journal on it. You do not need to have the answer. Let the answer come to you, right? Let this be sort of like a process, an inner process of just engaging with yourself in a new way. And so once you have posed the question, how does my inner genius make itself known? You can also ask, where does it show up? And what if different was exactly what the world needs right now from me for it to evolve and progress? And that is also an important question, because very often we think that, if I'm too different, then, I'm not going to be able to really connect, and I'm not really going to be able to make a difference for other people. But what if different is required? And really honoring that inside of you, allowing yourself to be that person. I am different, and that's okay. And that maybe the world needs that. Maybe the world needs that spark, that unique spark that you are, that is different, right? Maybe your communities where you currently live need that spark. So what if different was exactly what the world needs right now from me for it to evolve and progress? And again, just sit with that question. Now, Mercury aligns with the Sun and the Moon in Aquarius, so it makes a direct connection with the new moon. And this is a tremendous opportunity for all of us to become more aware of our individual impact on the collective, so we can really see it a little bit more clearly. And we're really all agent of change. We already are that, and we always were that. It's just we're maybe waking up to that more now with this combination. Now, the other part of Mercury connecting to the new moon like that is that intelligence and communication abilities are quite strong for the next 4 weeks. And so what's important with this, though, is that we also make sure that we listen as well as we speak. Because communication goes both ways, right? Communication means, we're speaking something, but we're also receiving what someone else speaks. So, and that's important to remember. Now, given that this is in Aquarius, we may feel particularly cool and collected when we communicate, or even detached sometimes. So do your best to avoid arrogance or rigidity of thought. And focus instead on objectivity and a larger vision for yourself or for your community or for the world. And so we want to try and, focus on the higher vibration of Aquarius, right, with this. Now, what you can ask yourself here is, if people hung on every word I uttered, what would I say? So if the whole world was listening, right? If the whole world was listening to everything that you had to say, what would you say? And what would I hold back from saying? And what might the best outcome be if I expressed myself fully, knowing that others may have a different opinion to me, but that's okay. So what might be the best outcome here if I did that? So, and how might this impact my communities? So again, it comes back down to, we're not living in a vacuum. We're living with other people. And we're living in a town, a city, a state, a country, right? We live on a planet. So you can expand that, as far as you'd like to. We're living in a universe, right? You can expand that as far as you'd like to, but there is always sort of like this, there's more to you than just you as a unit, right? And so right now, our individual capacity to affect change is definitely far greater than we realize. So especially for those of us who have a very strong Uranus in their chart, Uranus conjunct the Sun or Uranus conjunct the Ascendant. For those of us who have strong Aquarian energies in their chart, a lot of planets in Aquarius, for example, or a lot of planets in the 11th house, because the 11th house is also the Aquarian house. And so if any of this is strongly emphasized in your birth chart, then I would say, you tend to be more of a, you tend to be an individual that's being invited to team up with others who also care deeply about creating a better future and really creating some change. So if you don't know if that's you or not, stay tuned until the end. I will talk a little bit about how to look that up in your birth chart, okay? Now ask yourself, how can I inspire others to foster progress? And the key word with this question is inspire. How can I inspire others to foster progress? And what we have to understand with, especially if you have a lot of Aquarian energy in your chart or Uranian energy in your chart, is you can never force other people to change. We don't have that power. Everybody has free will. I have free will, you have free will. And it's good that way. We want it to be that way. So how can we inspire others to foster progress rather than force others to foster progress, right? And what might become possible if we all came together to create meaningful change for everyone, perhaps even for all living things, which includes, of course, plants and animals and, everything that has sort of like an energetic pattern to it. Now, Uranus, which is the modern ruler of Aquarius, is currently in Aries, in the very late degree of Aries. It's about to change signs in March. But for now, it's still in Aries, and it makes an alignment with Mars. And Mars, of course, is in its own sign, being in Aries, because Mars rules Aries. So this is a very potent combination. And so this really encourages us to move things forward, especially things we feel passionate about. So we're really ready to change the status quo in our own lives and collectively. We really want to kind of like go, let's do it, let's go, right? So since this alignment can bring up lots of nervous energy as well, because Uranus is involved here, and we may also experience sudden spurts of energy moving through our bodies, we need to really stay grounded as much as possible. So this is very important, to regularly ground yourself. And we can do this in a lot of different ways, a lot of ways to ground yourself could be exercise, or, you could do something with your physical body, like hula hooping or martial arts or anything that, might feel right to you with this particular combination. But also, using it on a mental level as well, where you bring your passion into like something where you're debating with other people or brainstorming with other people or connecting with other people and allowing yourself to share your visions that you have for something that you want to move forward. So these are all things that you can do as long as you stay grounded and real and connected with yourself, right? And not get into trying to push anything that's not ready to be pushed, right? those of us with a strong Mars and Aries signature in our charts will probably feel this a little bit more than other people. I mean, this is true for everybody, but if you do have a strong Mars or Aries signature in your chart, you may want to pay particular attention to this upcoming part here, which is beware of taking sudden and rash actions. So take responsibility for your desires and impulses and just ask yourself, is this the highest and best interest of everyone involved? Whatever it is that I'm engaging with, whether that's physically or mentally or emotionally, is this the highest and best? Is this in the highest and best interest of everyone involved? And am I using my warrior energy, which is that Mars energy, to protect and defend future visions and support the individual, or to defy and rebel? And this is really important because sometimes we don't necessarily see that distinction. Sometimes we think that if we're defiant and rebellious, we are protecting and defending the future and the individual. But that's not necessarily true, because when we're defying and rebellious, we're really coming from that lower vibration, from that very dense vibration of Aquarius. And that could create a lot of conflict, and it can create a separation between people rather than coming together. And what we really want with the Aquarian energy is to come together, not to separate necessarily. So really ask yourself, am I using my warrior energy to protect and defend future visions and support the individual, or to defy and rebel? And there's a very clear difference here, right? If you really listen to that question carefully. Now, another question you can ask here is, am I asserting myself to affect real change, or simply dumping out my anger to dominate, disrupt, and create more separation for myself? So is there sort of like, sometimes we want to prove to ourselves that, we are not part of the collective, or we are too different, right? And so and this can happen on a very unconscious level as well. It's not necessarily something you do consciously. But when we have this belief that we are too different and we cannot really connect with the collective, or we cannot really understand how a certain group of people is a particular way, then we are, sometimes we're dumping out of anger, that the anger comes up, and we create more separation by doing that. So if you catch yourself, really kind of putting anger onto a particular group of people, or a particular, branch out there in the world that's maybe directing something that you're not agreeing with, then just see, is that actually serving anything, and is that actually helping the higher vision, the longer term vision that you have in terms of bringing humanity together? Now, some other questions you can ask yourself here is, where do I feel limited? And what would it take to consciously break away from those situations? Because sometimes in life, we definitely have this feeling of like we're feeling stuck or limited in terms of like our own personal freedom, like we feel like our own personal freedom is not being honored, and is not being, is being infringed upon. So if we really get conscious about what those situations are in our lives where we're feeling that limitation, where we're feeling that sense of non-freedom, what would it take to consciously break away from those situations? And so obviously I'm talking about things that you do have control over, right? There are certain situations that we don't necessarily have a lot of control over. We have maybe smaller controls over certain things, and then more control over other things. But when it comes to control, it's important to notice that the most control you always have of yourself, how you respond to yourself, to life, to others, to the world. Your response is your biggest control. And that makes the difference in terms of like how you experience things in your life. So just keep that in mind when you go over these questions a little bit. Now, Mars in Aries also squares Pluto in Capricorn. So we all have survival tactics, right? And we formed these tactics in response to past circumstances. So something that's happened to us in the past may have informed how we decide or how we choose things in the now. And if it's something that's not currently connected to the now, but it's really just connected to a past experience, then we would call that survival tactics. And so what you want to ask yourself here is, what if I expanded my awareness and comprehension of my personal survival tactics by just 5%? So it's really important to be aware of these survival tactics because they're so unconscious very often, because we're so used to engaging in these tactics that we don't really see them as bad. We just see them as very familiar, and we see them as very necessary very often. But it's very important to become aware and really understand, like, okay, is this something that I'm doing because of my current situation and where I'm at right now? Or is this something that I'm doing because of how the past has informed me and has, and this is something I've always done. This is something that I'm kind of like, it's a pattern of mine. These are sort of my survival strategies. They're strategies, right? And then another question we can ask ourselves is, what might be a new perspective on my fears and defenses? And what would that show me? So, and that's important too, right? Because Pluto will sometimes bring up our fears and our defensive places. We feel defensive or we feel protective. Maybe places where we felt disempowered and now we want to feel more empowered. So if we can bring a new perspective to those places in us and these defenses that we've built, what might that show me? How might that shift things in my life? Now, our ambition and drive to succeed are incredibly strong right now with this square. And so we feel really prepared to go at any length in order to achieve our goals. And we really have the required energy to do so as well. So it's really a need to achieve, sometimes even a compulsive one. And we often find it difficult to stop. So it's important to remember with this aspect, that this could also lead to power struggles because we're kind of not knowing when to stop. And perhaps we feel that with an authority figure, perhaps we feel it within ourselves. The problem is with this square that sometimes we push. And so push might come to shove. And once we're in a shoving match, with another person or with a situation, when Mars and Pluto are involved, we may not know when enough is enough, because there's a tendency to just be very much like in this place of like, rah, like warrior meets defensive survival strategies. So do your best, to tap into the power of love from within if you can. Really see your survival strategies for what they are. That they've something that's familiar, but it's connected to the past. It's not connected to the now. And so when we start to open up and surrender to our heart and to trusting a little bit more that we're okay and that we are no longer needing to hold on to these past disempowerments, we can actually release and let them go. Then the heart can start to open up. We can get more in touch with the power of love. And we can find creative ways to empower ourselves and other people. And so what's really important here is flexibility. Flexibility is really key. Walking away for 10 minutes might just save you from doing something that you later regret. And it also might save you from burning out because, when you put that much energy into something and you're not stopping ever, you're gonna burn out at one point. So these are some things to just keep in mind for the next 2 to 4 weeks. Now, Jupiter in Sagittarius sextiles the new moon, and Mercury in Aquarius as well. And Jupiter in Sagittarius also squares Neptune in Pisces. So what does all of this mean? Now let's start with the sextile to the new moon and Mercury. Now this is an opportunity for us to expand our thinking and express ourselves with confidence and optimism. We get a chance to really share what's important to us from a place of open-mindedness and excitement. And this connection also creates a possibility of expansion by stepping into uncharted territory. So what you want to ask yourself here is, what could I do to instill confidence in my exploration of the mind? And is there a new mental process or vision that is asking to be explored? So just remember that this Jupiter energies is really bringing sort of a very explorative energy to the table. And so it's all about just, personal growth and expanding and growing and seeing the bigger picture, right? So this is what we can bring to that visionary energy that Aquarius has. So when the two come together, this is a huge opportunity, that Sagittarian energy and that Aquarian energy. That's really, that could create something really wonderful and something really big. Now, let's talk about Jupiter, the Jupiter-Neptune square. That's also part of this new moon chart. Now, this combo has already been active for the last 5 weeks, and it really invites us to stretch ourselves, to grow beyond what we've currently known ourselves to be. And with these two planets involved, they're both in their own signs, so therefore that feels quite exalted. Like Jupiter in Sagittarius, Neptune in Pisces, they're both feel very strong in their own signs. So this aspect really invites us to be more aware of our current connection to the divine and our inner process and what we believe about it. So we also already mentioned a little bit about that in our most recent full moon lunar eclipse video. So if you're a member of my online community already, feel free to watch that part of the lunar eclipse video again, just as a refresher. Or you can also read about this aspect in the weekly forecasts that include January 13th, because that's the day when that aspect was exact. Now, for now though, ask yourself, if I was given life for a reason and my time was precious, who would I want to be in this moment and with this breath? And I think that's a really, really beautiful question. And feel free to use this question all the time. This is not just a question you need to use right now, but I think this is really a beautiful question that we can engage with on a regular basis, for the rest of our lives if we want to. But especially right now with this square. Then the other question you can ask yourself with this square is, what does spiritual expansion mean to me? What does that look like? If I were ready to expand on a spiritual level, what would that look like for me? Now, some other things you can tune into and contemplate about is, what was the cultural story that you were told growing up when you were little? And this is different for different people, right? Because each generation has sort of like a different cultural story that they engage in and that grow up within. So see what's yours. What's your cultural story that you were told growing up? Via the media, via your parents, teachers, communities, right? So what was your cultural story? And how could we all sing a greater song while on this earth? And I think that's a really beautiful question as well. So just allow yourself to maybe journal on that and see what comes up. Now, Saturn, which is the traditional ruler of Aquarius, is going to be our last aspect that we'll talk about for this new moon chart. Saturn is currently in Capricorn and makes an alignment with Pluto in Capricorn and sextiles Neptune in Pisces. So first, let's focus on that alignment between Saturn and Pluto, which is very important, because this conveys like an extra potent message about our perception of physical reality. And in particular, time and space. How do we relate to time? How do we relate to space? What is it? And also about our relationship to structure, discipline, and power, and also feeling empowered, right? Feeling empowered around our long-term goals. So anything in connection, because Capricorn is about the long-term goals that we have, the longer game that we're playing on the physical level as human beings. and the relationship that we have, with the structures and that belong to these long-term goals, and the structures that we have in place, of course, are like, our governments, for example. That's part of the structure that a society is made of, so that, they can function properly, right, to some degree. And so what do these structures currently look like? Are they serving us long term? Are they based on, things that are from the past that are no longer connected to what's actually currently going on? So we want to really get a sense for that, what feels empowering to us on an individual and a collective level, And with the South Node also being in Capricorn right now, it's really important for us to kind of slow down a little bit, take our time, have a new connection with what is time or timing of things. Take breaks, when we're engaging or wanting to achieve something. Allow ourselves to tune in and get present, get grounded in the now moment, get present to what's actually so now, rather than trying to bring the past into the present moment, or trying to be in the future rather than being in the present moment. Now here you can ask yourself, what feels toxic or destructive in my current reality? And really try to be honest with yourself here, in your own life right now, what feels toxic or destructive? And what might I discover if I was authentic and truthful about what I want to build long term? What might I discover if I was really, truly authentic and truthful with myself about what I want to build long term? Take away all the fears and all the limitations that you think you might have, all the belief systems that are in place that tell you, no, I can't, or no, that's not possible. Take away all of that and just look to see if you're really authentic and truthful with yourself. What is it that you'd like to build long term? And how can you, take baby steps towards that? And then ask yourself also, if I truly had choice in the matter, what future would I choose? If you truly had choice in the matter, what future would you choose? And what if I focused on responding to life in a way that respects and serves all those involved? And so that's really about, empowering ourselves and others. It's about not trying to destroy things, but to actually, release our fears, release our defenses, start to trust from an open heart again, and to build something slowly that's empowering, that we can feel passionate about, that we can feel like we really want to live there. We want to live into that. And okay, so the last question is, could it perhaps be useful to release any fears of scarcity and resulting distrust? And that's a very, very important last question. So please feel free to meditate on that, to journal on that, and really focus on yourself, right? Focus on what goes on for you when it comes to that. Because, it's easy sometimes to focus on what goes on outside of us, with society, with the rest of the world, and how, everybody else is not doing it right, or how everybody else is not seeing it the right way. But if we really stay with ourselves and we really dig in and we're really being honest with ourselves, and we see, where are my fears? Where's my sense of scarcity? Where does that come up? Where is my distrust with other people? And really kind of looking at that carefully and honestly. And would it be useful to release some of that stuff? Just allow ourselves to just acknowledge it and breathe it out. Now, let's talk about the sextile to Neptune. And I promise that's the last aspect there is to talk about. But that's actually a really nice aspect, because, again, we have two planets in their own signs, Saturn in Capricorn, Neptune in Pisces, both in their own signs. So they're both, this particular aspect has a more potent opportunity for us to bring an intuitive and creative approach to building the various foundations in our lives that we're currently building, both individually and collectively. So what you want to ask yourself here is, what might transpire if I brought 5% more compassion and acceptance towards my inner and outer long-term process? Because we're all currently in the process of building and looking at what works, what doesn't work. We're currently looking at what's in alignment with ourselves, right? So we all are engaging currently in an inner and outer process. You know, these processes are connected with each other. What might transpire if I brought 5% more compassion and acceptance towards my inner and outer long-term processes? And what could I manifest if I was simply being present in the now moment to all the energies inside and around me? And really tapping into like what's currently energetically going on. You know, most people don't really ask themselves that question. You know, we're very often we don't stop to really observe what is there energetically speaking. We just kind of like go about and we're kind of like on autopilot 90% of the time, you know? And, you know, honestly, this is true for me too. Like very often I don't stop to go, oh, what's going on energetically? I very often am also on autopilot. I am not excluded from this. So I want you to just understand that, you know, doesn't mean that you have to do this the perfect way and you don't have to always perfectly be in alignment with everything that goes on around you or within you. But it's important to just be in that place of like, I want to attempt at least to go in that direction whenever I'm conscious of that. Whenever I'm able to pull myself into the present moment, whenever I'm able to be conscious of how I'm relating to myself and to the outside world, like take that opportunity and really be present in the now moment and really see what are the energies doing inside of me and around me, whenever that's possible. And it's not always going to be possible, right? But we can make time, you know, and that's why these questions are really great too, right? Is to make time to get conscious in that moment when you are meditating or in that moment when you're journaling about these questions. And then the last question that you can ask yourself here is, what would my starting point be then if I got really present to the now moment? What would be my starting point then? Because, you know, very often, of course, our starting point is not connected to what's actually going on inside of us or in our environment. It's very often our starting point is either connected to the past or to the future. But that's, of course, not where we have the most power and the most influence, because the past is already gone and the future hasn't happened yet. So the future at best is sort of like it's a vision, but it's not real yet, you know? So we don't actually know exactly what the future will be. We're in the process of creating the future, but in order to do that, we have to be present to the present moment, right? So with this sextile, you know, we really have a unique opportunity right now to more deeply trust our inner processes, whilst also allowing the universe or source or your higher selves, whatever you want to call it, to step in and guide us as we build those structures, you know, individually speaking and collectively speaking, you know, to build those structures that support something sustainable and long lasting. So this is a real opportunity here, you know, to really allow ourselves to trust our inner processes, to be more connected to what goes on in here. And so you can see, you know, you can just say, if you're doing this, you know, if you're actually engaging in this inner process, and if you're actually engaging in allowing that to be a part of what that supports you in building sustainable and long-term structures, you know, what would that look like for you if you were able to do that? And how might you contribute to the collective version of that effort? Because we can do this for ourselves, but, you know, every time we do something for ourselves, we're also doing it for the collective at the same time as well. You know, so what does it look like for you, and what could that look like for the collective? So to sum it all up for this new moon, suppressing or denying our unique gifts we each bring to the collective experience is definitely not wise at this point. And we're more aware than ever that we are interconnected, and that every single one of us has a contribution to make with this human experience and is capable of making a difference on this shared journey that we all have. Because in the end, what we all really have in common is that we're all human beings. We all have that in common. And we're all on this planet to explore the human experience. We're all on this planet to somehow evolve and grow in our experience to some extent. And we're all in different places, of course, with that growing and evolving. We're not all in the same category, in the same place, but the journey for all of us is that to really explore that human experience. So ask yourself, how do I relate to the universe and my place within it? Do I believe in a universe that is alive and interconnected, or one that is random and separate? And really tune in with that, like even within the next, 28 days, check to see, do I believe in a universe that is alive and interconnected, or that's random and separate? And just check in if your behavior or your thinking is in alignment with one or the other. Just keep that in the back of your mind as you're engaging in your day-to-day life with others, or with life itself. And what if diversity was the greatest gift we could give to each other at this time? And diversity, of course, is important, because without diversity, if we're all exactly the same, we wouldn't bring anything unique to the table. And it's that unique spark that we really need to bring to the table to grow as a human species. And what if time was what brought healing and wholeness to us all? And it's important to really understand the importance of time, that time is something that really helps us to develop. It helps us to see things more clearly. It helps us to take time with something so that we're really doing it in a way that serves us, in a way that works for us. And being, really honoring what time represents and what time is, and how it can really contribute to our healing and our wholeness on an individual level, on a collective level, on a human level. That's really something to kind of investigate for yourself. And if that were so, if time was, a part of our healing and bringing wholeness to us all, if that were so, might this call for patience on my part? So, just kind of like checking in with our level of patience, which of course, with, Mars and Aries, that we have to kind of like work with, how can we be patient and at the same time passionate and wanting to move forward, right? Now, if you have an ascendant or any personal planets in 13 to 18 degrees of Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, or Scorpio, then this new moon, of course, is going to affect you a little bit more than other people. But I would invite you, nevertheless, to take a look in your natal chart. Where does 15 to 16 degrees of Aquarius land in your birth chart? And take a look at that house placement of that, where that new moon will land, because that house placement will indicate which area of life is most impacted for you for the next 28 days. And if you don't know how to look that up in your natal chart, feel free to check out my 30-minute class on how to read your birth chart. This is, right now you can get free access to this class via my homepage. If you go to astrologercoach.com and just scroll down all the way where you see free class, and you click on that link, and then it will take you to that class on how to read your birth chart. Now, you might also want to join us live on February 20th for our next forecasting forum. If you have any questions, if there's something that you've been contemplating, that you are not sure about in terms of your birth chart or in terms of what we're covering for that forecasting forum, we'll definitely take a look directly into our own birth charts to see how Mercury's first retrograde phase of the year in Pisces will impact each one of us. So if that's of interest to you, to explore and see how that's impacting you, and also, you know, when about the shadow phases and about the station phases of Mercury as well, to just see what that means and how that impacts each one of us as well. And if you're not yet a star or superstar member of my online community, you can register via the homepage for that. You can scroll down to the countdown of the next forum and click on register there. And star and superstar members are automatically registered and will receive an email on the day of the webinar to join live, as well as a video presentation of the forum within 24 hours of the live event. So just keep that in mind. And now let's talk about our intentions, because it's the new moon, so we want to set some powerful intentions for the next 28 days. And so the best time to set new moon intentions is usually right after the new moon becomes exact, but we want to avoid any moon void, of course, phases, because the moon void, of course, doesn't lend itself very beautifully to intention setting, because intention setting is something where we want to put something down that aligns with the energies of the new moon, and something where we're manifesting something in regards to that energy. So this month, the best time to set our intentions would be anytime between 4 or 5 p.m. on February 4th until 6:59 p.m. on February 5th. And then again from 9:02 p.m. on February 5th until 4 or 5 p.m. on February 6th. And all of this is New York time, East Coast time. And if you don't live in that particular time zone, then feel free to either convert the time zone that you're living in from New York time zone into your own time zone, or if you want to join me on my Facebook fan page or my Twitter page, I will be posting reminders throughout those time frames, multiple times. I will be posting reminders on Facebook and on Twitter to set your new moon intentions. Okay, so feel free to join me there if you don't want to be converting those times yourself. And if you want to have more information about how to set intentions for each new moon, feel free to go to my website, to the blog page, and then look for astrology articles or the tag new moon intentions. There's a tag new moon intentions, which is again on the right hand side of the blog page if you on a computer, or if you're on your phone, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom and then you can find the tags there and just click on new moon intentions. All right, so to sign up for my free monthly newsletter, you can go to my homepage, to astrologercoach.com, or you can email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write newsletter in the subject line. The newsletter is sent out once a month and has special offers, videos, the new moon video in particular, announcements about my forums or any other courses that I'm teaching, or retreats, and then anything else that I'm announcing about my business and about the website or the online community. So any of that is available via the free monthly newsletter. And then if you have any other questions for me, you can either email me at sonja@astrologercoach.com. That's SONJA@astrologercoach.com. Any general questions that you have about the new moon or about astrology, you can ask me there. But if it's a personal question that requires of me to pull up your birth chart, I will ask you to book a reading with me via my website, via the services page. Or you can also ask questions that are connected to what's coming up within the next 30 days by joining the monthly forecasting forum on February 20th. Okay, so all of that is possible. My members will see me in 2 weeks again around the time of the full moon, so we can look at how far we've come since setting our new moon intentions and talk a little bit about the full moon energies. And everyone else is going to connect with me in 4 weeks from now for the next new moon. All right, so looking forward to seeing all of you. This is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis. Goodbye.